The Sports Memo Podcast college football preview. Guys, we got a huge show today. We got Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Missouri talking coaching changes, what side we think you need to be on this year in terms of season win totals, how we're looking to bet them. So it's a big show. We got Robbie Veno from sportsmemo.com. We also got Ralph Michaels as well from Wager Talk. Ralph, welcome in. How you feeling today?
Hey guys, doing great. The draft is over. We had some excitement, a semi-live sporting event to watch. So, before we do start, Drew, I do want to mention that, two things. Number one, I did put up a draft recap and, we talk about the draft. We remember those first round picks. But it's important. We're going through some major teams in the SEC, but you could find some teams that lost a lot of core value from those non-Power 5 teams. And it's important to know what a team lost, especially draft personnel. When you're in CUSA and you lose a second-round pick, it's a big deal. It's not like being in the SEC. So check that out. That's at wagertalk.com on my homepage. And also, again, I want to mention the layaway package, Sports Memo or Wager Talk. $99 now locks you into our super early bird special. You can pay just a balance of $500 for the college football or NFL season. Anyone at Sports Memo, anyone at Wager Talk, it's a great deal. Take advantage.
All right, Ralph, and we got Robbie Veno, sportsmemo.com. Robbie, I know you're excited for today's show, man.
Absolutely, buddy. We've been looking forward to the Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach edition of this weekly show here. Want to just quickly add to what Ralph was saying about the draft guide that he put out this morning, so to speak, or at least the draft results table. It's probably more important to look at that than it is returning starters and lost starters because it totally describes NFL talent lost from a team. Not everybody that is lost from year to year is an NFL talent, but certainly the point system, the weighted system that Ralph uses in that will give you a good gauge of just how much talent these teams actually lost, meaningful talent, let's put it that way. So I think it's a pretty good thing to check too. Drew, Joe Burrow shows up, but I don't see his girlfriend in the picture in the living room. That's got to be a huge disappointment right off the bat of the draft there.
Oh, it was terrible, Robbie. I mean, I had a great draft betting it, but I mean, it started off with a dud in terms of she wasn't even in the room, man.
Yeah, that's horrible. Everybody else's girlfriend was in the room.
Yeah, really. They must have broken up. I mean, some guy on Twitter did DM me, and he's like, yeah, I think they broke up. And I'm like, oh, dang it. Like, a couple hours before the draft. I'm like, I wish I would have known that before. It's more like a shot in the dark. But anyway, guys, I agree with you, man. It was a lot of fun to watch that draft. I mean, I call it a live sporting event. It was the most fun I've had betting in quite some time. I'm sure it was the same for both of you guys. But Hey, we really need to get into today's show because I know it's going to be very informative, good for sports bettors, heck, just good for overall college football fans. If we do get a season this year, we're talking Ole Miss and Mississippi State, going to be a heck of an egg bowl this year. We got the Pirate, Mike Leach. We got Lane Kiffin, Joey Fishwater. The whole SEC West will be a big talk here because we got Missouri as well on the east side, but Robbie, a team I know that you've been preparing for a lot this season in Ole Miss. They got Lane Kiffin making the trip up to Oxford. He also hires DJ Durkin as his defensive coordinator. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about that. That's kind of an interesting hire there. A guy with a lot of, I guess you could say, fanfare. Some people don't like him very much. I thought he was building something there at Maryland before he had all those issues. Their season win total 5.5, a little juice towards the over here. They do have Baylor in week 1. Out of conference, they have UConn, Georgia Southern, Southeast Missouri. They can rack up a couple wins there. I mean, I'm telling you, Robbie, you're not going to be naming a bunch of teams in the country before you name Ole Miss in terms of young, talented quarterback rooms. They got Matt Carroll. They got Plumlee. I mean, you can make the argument Plumlee's one of the fastest quarterbacks in the country. I believe he is the fastest quarterback in the over 200 yards rushing against the national champion LSU Tigers. He put on a highlight reel in terms of when he played LSU last year. Ole Miss, and guys, we'll be talking with Ralph and get his opinion here too. On Twitter, he sent out a very interesting tweet in terms of they have a stretch here, Auburn, LSU, Alabama, where you could put that stretch of 3 up against anybody. But outside of that, this is the one out of all the teams we've talked this year. I like Ole Miss over the 5.5 wins here, Robbie. You got any feeling on their season win total and your overall view of Ole Miss this upcoming season, man? Looks like we lost Robbie. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
You know me, I got plenty to say. So, we look at, let's first talk their win total since you brought them up. Again, my database, and I go through and I put power ratings in for each team, the home edges, and it works out the theoreticals. My theoretical has Ole Miss at 6.4 wins. So it certainly is a team I lean over, depending on the juice you get, would say whether to bet them or not. You have a situation with Ole Miss that you have 4 games as a double-digit favorite. So anytime you're only having to win 5.5 and 4 of them are a double-digit favorite, it's a nice spot. They're also going to be, I have them as a 5.9 point favorite against Miss State, a 6.4 favorite against Arkansas, and then basically a pick 'em when they play Baylor in the neutral setting to start. So clearly, I do lean over. One thing I want to bring up with them is, you look at their season last year, and they were very close to being a solid team. Yes, they were 2-6 in the SEC, but they were only minus 7 yards per game. That basically is like a 4-4 team. And then you look at their games decided by a touchdown or less. They won 0 games by a touchdown or less, and they lost 5 of them. Those are the teams that I like to look at that are going to bounce back. And then let's look at the draft. The 2019 Ole Miss team had 6 players drafted. So last year's team was bereft of talent. This year they had nobody drafted. You talked about how young they were. You talked about the quarterback coming back. Now I will say this, it'll be interesting to see what Plumlee does. Plumlee also is a baseball star. So if the baseball season starts later and goes into football, we'll see how invested he is in that baseball time to make sure he's going to invest fully in the football period. So, some interesting numbers to look at. But, I have them as a team this year that is, you look at the schedule, and it's just so brutal early. When your first 5 games are Baylor, Auburn, LSU, and Alabama, you could be a much improved team and still be 1-4. That's very difficult for a new young team to take on with a new head coach. Your thoughts on that, Drew?
Absolutely, man. I mean, when you start talking to new head coach, Ralph, and getting out the gates, which is a big difference here with the first 2 teams we're talking about. Ole Miss, I mean, it's like murderer's row to start. Mississippi State, I mean, you could make the argument they have the easiest schedule an SEC West team can possibly have, because of who they're pulling from the east side and also their out-of-conference schedule. Ole Miss on the totally different end. So, yeah, I agree with you. A new head coach, new defensive coordinator, and you get out of the gate with a bunch of losses. That's it's almost like you're swimming upstream just to kind of make a bowl game. Now, I do think they'll be able to overcome it because of what we talked about. I mean, their quarterback room is very, very talented. It's young. A lot of people don't know about it unless you're really an Ole Miss or SEC kind of insider here and looking to bet on it a lot, but a lot of kind of like the fringe fans, I don't think realize how talented this squad is that Lane Kiffin's kind of taken over here. Robbie, I want to get you in. Not sure if you can hear us okay. You good to go?
I got you.
Okay.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. As long as you guys can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on Ole Miss?
Well, you guys took care of the schedule strength and the outlook of the team, so let me go ahead and take care of the coaching changes here and what we might look at with Ole Miss. Obviously, when you switch over from Rich Rodriguez to Lane Kiffin, there's a little bit of a difference. Somewhat. There'll be some similarities, guys. I mean, Rodriguez leans on a strong running game, power running game, and Kiffin, for the most part, leans on the same thing. He is an outstanding play caller, and that's kind of what separates him from a lot of folks in this business as far as OCs are concerned. He's going to call the plays for this team. I'm going to point out a couple of things as far as his offenses are concerned. Let's go back to just his Florida Atlantic tenure. 3 years there, his first head coaching job, and he kind of performs really well. 2-11-3 teams, 17-19, but with two different style offenses. In 2017, that team runs the ball 65% of the time and only throws it 35% of the time. I think that's the Devin Singletary year. 665 run plays were called, only 361 pass. Very heavy run oriented. They almost run for 4,000 of their 7,000 yards. Come back in 19 last year, Drew. We talk about Chris Robeson a lot, the quarterback there. And the offense was more pass heavy. The play calling balance, 52.3 to 47.7, much closer. 551 run plays, 502 pass plays. And the passing yardage was heavy, 3,950 pass yards as opposed to only 2,320 rushing yards. So he'll beat you either way. But I'm going to point out this because in looking deep into their coaching staff, I think we can figure out what Lane Kiffin prefers here. And I'm going to go ahead and say that he prefers the Art Briles style of offense. When he got hired at Florida Atlantic, his initial hire for offensive coordinator was Kendall Briles. And that's 2017. That's the year they ran the power ground game air raid system, gained 7,000 yards. Had a different offensive coordinator in 19. Here, his hires are interesting. He doesn't have Kendall Briles, but he hires Jeff Libby as his offensive coordinator, Art Briles' disciple. He hires Randy Clements as offensive line coach, Art Briles' disciple. Hires JoJo Finley, tight ends coach, 2015 Art Briles' disciple. All of these coaches were part of the 2015 Baylor staff. It leads me to believe that while Kiffin's flexible and he can run any kind of offense, he's going to want to run the Art Briles power ground game, air raid system, and he's got all the tools to do it. You guys talked about the quarterback room. Let's not forget about how well they ran the football last year. The entire offensive line is back for this team. So I think that's what we're going to see. Now, they didn't have any spring practices, so we didn't get to look at it. But my best guess is that's the way they're going to go. I think that's the preferred style here for Lane Kiffin. Defensively, Mike McIntyre was great here last year, right, guys? We talked about him in the last show. He shaved off rushing yardage off of the Ole Miss defense. I think they allowed 84 yards less. They only allowed 26.5 points per game. They shaved the total yards down. And now you got the co-DCs. Drew, you talked about DJ Durkin. I'm not sure that you can let DJ Durkin into any recruit's house at this point in time, but Chris Partridge is the big recruiter of the two, so you can send him out. But these guys work together at Michigan, very familiar with each other. They've got experience in multiple defensive sets, so they can go any which way they want to go. But McIntyre's 3-4 was really successful last year. We'll see if they stick with it. They had a game plan. They were going to go into spring, check out the talent, and make position switches in the summer. That spring didn't happen. The defense is behind the curve here right now, Drew. I wouldn't be surprised. Again, we've said this more than once. If this set of co-DCs goes ahead and runs what Mississippi ran last year, because they know it best, it's easiest to just go through that again with the situation we have right now. I think offensively they'll be great. Defensively, we'll see what these guys choose to do as far as defensive sets are concerned.
Robbie, one thing I just want to make a correction. Maybe you misspoke, but again, Lane Kiffin, of course, was the head coach for the Oakland Raiders, the Tennessee Volunteers, and USC. And the funny thing is, Drew and Rob, I look back and I think in my mind that Lane Kiffin was just horrible at Tennessee and he got fired, and horrible at USC and he got fired. At Tennessee, he was actually 7-6, 4-4 in the SEC. Hell, they haven't been that good in a long time. And at USC, the first 2 years, he was ineligible for the Pac-12 title game and a bowl game. He still went 8-5 and 10-2, and then he went 7-6 his third year and got fired 5 games in. So, that's one of those fallacies that in my mind, I think Lane Kiffin was horrible at both places and got run out, when in fact he had a solid winning record at both schools.
Yeah,
that's a great point, Ralph. I mean, he kind of
probably
gets
should have worded
a
it
rough
different.
route.
Oh, I'm sorry, Drew. I'm stepping all over you here. That's why I say more or less Lane Kiffin's return to head coaching,
Yes.
not his first head coaching stint, which I had said. So the return was with Florida Atlantic. Drew, go ahead. I apologize, buddy.
Oh no, it's all good. You know, I agree with Ralph. I mean, he kind of gets kind of a rough route in terms of how good of a head coach he is. I mean, you said it in terms of 11-3 twice at FAU. Now, could he do it at the big schools here? He's making a big step up. I mean, he's going right into the middle of it in the SEC West. But I keep going back to the quarterbacks. I mean, you know, Plumlee, in terms of his speed, his athleticism, he reminds me a lot of Johnny Manziel. I don't know what he's like off the field, but on the field. And then they also have Matt Carroll. And Robbie, I know you're a good evaluator of talent. Who do you think takes more snaps this upcoming year for the Rebels?
I think if you look back at what Baylor has done with their quarterbacks under Art Briles and the way Lane Kiffin is trending, I think Matt Corral would be his first choice. He's the better blend of arm strength and running ability. Matt Corral gets sold short on his ability to run because Plumlee's such a great runner. I mean, Plumlee's the better runner of the two. The accuracy would be his problem, but I would put it beyond. You know, last year, Rich Rod used both of these guys in a lot of schemes inside one game, and it drove opposing defenses crazy. I wouldn't be surprised to see them both used again. There's a third guy in line here, guys, who may be the best of all. We'll find out for sure. But I think Matt Corral might get the first look just because of the power arm. Lane Kiffin likes to attack deep down the field vertically when they throw. So we'll see which way it goes. I'm sure they're going to say it's open, and whichever guy plays better during practice wins it. But I would think Corral has a slight edge.
I will say this. There was only 50 players to get over 1,000 yards in college football and only 4 quarterbacks. And when Kiffin was the OC at Alabama in 2016, he had Jalen Hurts, a quarterback much more like closer to Plumlee than Corral.
True, Ralph. Hey, in like 5 or 6 years, or maybe even less than that, how do you think we're going to look back and grade this hire for Ole Miss, Ralph? Do you think Lane Kiffin's going to have a good tenure here in Oxford?
Well, I never thought he would do what he did at FAU, taking that program, get him to recruit like they did. There were a lot of people that were not even looking at Ole Miss to come play here and ended up coming and signing late with him. You know, he's got them, their recruiting class this year was number 34. They do tend to get some big in-state talent. I think, you know, I was actually down on Lane Kiffin when he went to FAU, but he's proven me wrong. So right now, I have to give him the benefit of the doubt until, you know, he falls back. So kudos to him. I think he's certainly overachieved what I thought he could.
Hey, part of me worries, you know, he was down there in Boca Raton. He was taking his boat to the coaches' shows down here in South Florida. And then, you know, before he was out in USC, kind of Southern California. Now he's going, you know, in the middle of the South, Oxford, Mississippi. I kind of worry a little bit about, you know, his personality in the small town South there. But overall, I think he'll be okay just because I remember reading articles down here in South Florida about how Lane Kiffin loved being the head coach of FAU because he could go out and be a normal guy. And it wasn't like he was the star of the town or anything. Whereas now he's the head football coach of an SEC football team. He's not going to be able to go anywhere without being recognized. Robbie, how do you think we kind of look back at this hire for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin?
I think they put themselves in a really good recruiting situation, Drew, and that's what it's all about in the SEC West. If you can recruit, you'll be good. I think they're better recruiting now with this staff. I think Lane Kiffin's probably a better recruiter than Matt Luke was as the head coach of this team. Yeah. As far as a closer goes, I think Lane Kiffin can take what's presented to him by his assistants and go in a family's house and close the deal a little bit better than Matt Luke could. So I think on that basis, they're likely to be better. And he'll get talent from anywhere, guys. He doesn't care if it's high school talent or if it's JUCO talent. Put a lot of JUCO talent on the field at Florida Atlantic. He'll get transfers from kids who want to play in that type of offense and be in the Power 5 SEC West. So I think they'll do fine. I really do. It might take a little bit of time, but, you know, boy, it's just tough territory, right? I know we're going to point out the Mississippi State schedule stretch in a minute, the 3-game stretch that they have. Living in the SEC West is difficult, but I think they're probably better with Lane Kiffin and the entire staff of recruiters that he has right now.
All right, guys, great stuff on Ole Miss. We got Mississippi State and then Missouri to finish up the show. We got Rich in the house. Thanks for joining us, man. Jordan as well. Mike, welcome in, man. Go Knowles from Mike. The director saying the Egg Bowl is going to be great this year. Absolutely great. It's maybe an understatement there, the director. We got Ryan. What's up, man? Like Clemson when they lost Lawrence, Farrell, Wilkins, Mullen. Big reason they took out Bama. Absolutely. LSU is going to be a tricky handicap, to say the least, this year. Abel, welcome in. Chris, Wager Talk. What is up, guys? So, Ralph, next team up, we got Mississippi State. And talking about the Egg Bowl, we got the Bulldogs on the other side here. But they have a name at the head coach that they hired that is up against Lane Kiffin, maybe even stronger here. Head coach Mike Leach, the Pirate. Mississippi State is kind of a Starkville itself. It's they put together some good teams in the past there, Ralph. It's just tough in this division to kind of climb over the other monsters in the SEC West. We got them season wins here, 6.5, -170 to the under. So early bets really coming on, kind of fade in Mississippi State here, Ralph. But what's your overall thoughts of Mississippi State this upcoming year, man?
Yeah, going to the database, you've got four easy wins as a double-digit favorite, and you have one as a favorite of over 3.5. So you're favored in 5 games. But running those numbers, I only have them at 6.11 wins with the number at 6.5. So that has me leaning under. They're a team that obviously uses the home edge, as a powerful tool. 8-2-1 the last couple years. They've been poor as a dog going on the road when they don't have the cowbells playing. They're a team that's lost a lot, Drew. 2 years ago, in the 2019 draft, they lost 5 players in the draft, including 3 number 1 draft picks. So you expected a down year last year. I mean, Alabama and Clemson and LSU and Ohio State have 3 number 1 draft picks. LSU and Bama, had 4 this year. But for a team like Miss State to lose that talent, last year expected a fallback. They did. And then last year, they also, this past draft, had 5 players drafted. So you're talking a lot of talent off this team. Another thing I want to point out is, they lost 4 games as a favorite. So their record could have been a lot better. But it was just a season that progressed and just never got that spark to go on. One thing I do want to point out, and I'm sure Rob will point this out as well, missing the spring will hurt Mississippi State and the offense much more than the others, because we talk about the run and shoot of Mike Leach. It's just the quarterbacks and wide receivers being on the same page without plays, knowing with what each other does. Now, transfer KJ Costello from Stanford wasn't going to be here in the spring anyway. He's still finishing classes up in Stanford, so he was never going to be here. But, I think the job is his to lose coming in. He was supposed to be a high NFL draft pick, had that rough season at Stanford last year. I think this could give him a total boost in this type of offense. But again, the continuity of this quarterback and the wide receiver and the offense with a brand new quarterback who wasn't here in the summer, a brand new offense and a brand new OC, I think it's going to be tough sledding to begin with. So even though they start off with being a 28-point favorite in the opener against Central Arkansas, a 15-point favorite against Vanderbilt in Game 2, and a 24-point favorite against Eastern Michigan in Game 4. They'll likely start 3-1, but I don't think I'll be laying those big double digits with this new offense early.
And Ralph, when you say that they'll likely start 3-1, that North Carolina State game, you have them losing, and I'm guessing.
Oh, no,
what do you have that right?
In between, they're at South Carolina, and I have the line at 7.7. So, I have them losing the South Carolina game and winning the other 3 to start off at 3-1.
Okay. And Robbie, what are your thoughts here, man, on Mississippi State looking forward to 2020?
Yeah, let's go through it. Ralph touched on it a little bit as far as the offense is concerned, but you do get Mike Leach. It's way different than what Joe Moorhead was running down here. And Joe Moorhead's offense, I guess, guys, you could classify it as a failure in 2 years. It really didn't get going. That Mississippi State thought it would, especially when he came from Penn State, and Penn State was clicking on all cylinders when Joe Moorhead left. A lot of reasons for it. I mean, Tommy Stevens never developed last year, even though he got drafted in the NFL draft late the other day. The second quarterback, Garrett, I'm forgetting his last name now, gets punched in the jaw before the bowl game, and Stevens has to come back. There's a lot going on at Mississippi State last year. Moorhead probably wasn't the right fit in Starkville. Drew, you talked about Starkville a little bit. Takes a certain kind of guy to coach there. Is Mike Leach the guy? I don't know, but it seems like Mike Leach could adapt anywhere, and the fan base could adapt to him no matter where he is. But the air raid is totally different. It places a ton of play calling responsibility on the quarterback at the line of scrimmage. We described, what Mike Leach's, offense is on that index card. Set routes, run them. It's all timing, all rhythm. Ralph's exactly right. When you don't have the opportunity, repetition's the biggest key to this thing, guys. And there's zero repetition available for QB and wide receivers. And, the increase in wide receivers that you're going to have. Remember, Mike Leach runs 4 wides every play. Mississippi State wasn't running 4 wides. Last year, if you take a look at Washington State, in fact, there's a nice little documentary on their season last season on Netflix or Amazon, one of those deals. But they were 8 deep at the wide receiver position last year. Now, I'm not saying Mississippi State can't recruit that, get 8 wide receivers, but they're interchangeable. They all have to know what's going on. KJ Costello's a smart kid, but I don't know that he can adapt right away. So what I did, guys, was I tried to think of, was there a first-year quarterback transfer that went to Leach's offense and succeeded? And you have to look no farther than Gardner Minshew. He went from East Carolina to Washington State, was a huge success. The difference is Gardner Minshew came from that style of offense, that East Carolina. KJ Costello's coming from Stanford. Totally different. He's got a great arm. He's a great thrower of the football. I just see problems there where that's concerned. It's a pretty good-sized transition, if you ask me, especially with no spring practice for that quarterback and the wide receivers. If you turn real quick to the defense, here's an interesting situation, guys. Their new defensive coordinator, Zach Arnett, actually signed on in the offseason to be the Syracuse DC. He stayed there for about 10 days and then took Mike Leach's job in Mississippi State. Mike Leach offered the job. He left Syracuse. Dino Babers was none too happy. You read a couple quotes from him. He wasn't happy. Zach Arnett is a disciple of Rocky Long. They're going to run a 3-3-5. Again, it's a major transition, implementing a 3-3-5 with no spring practice. Now, what Arnett is counting on, and I think we've said this before, is the uniqueness of the defense. SEC teams don't very often face 3-3-5. So he's quoted as saying that he hopes that it becomes a little bit of a problem for teams with only 1 week to prepare. Maybe it will. It might be just as big a problem for his team to figure it out without any spring practice. So I think they've got 2 sides of the ball that are both under major overhauls. We'll see how they do, but I think it's a difficult situation, much more difficult than the one at Ole Miss.
And looking at this schedule, Robbie, I mean, we talked about it at the top with Ralph, and I just feel that, and we see it in the season wins where Ole Miss is at 5.5 and Mississippi State's at 6.5. And when you compare these schedules, they're pretty different. I mean, for a team in the same conference, in the same division, to have drastically different schedules. I mean, Mississippi State has New Mexico, NC State, Arkansas, Tulane to start. Whereas Ole Miss, it gets right into the cooker pretty early. They also pull Kentucky and Missouri from the East as their 2 East opponents. It almost doesn't get any easier for them. They have Alabama, A&M before the Egg Bowl, so they can kind of get ready for Ole Miss there. The schedule sets up. In my opinion, I mean, I guess you could throw in a couple other teams that would be easier, the NC State game maybe. But for an SEC West team, this is about as easy as a schedule as it gets. Do you have any opinion here on the 6.5 as season win total?
Yeah, I don't think, obviously, Drew, where Mississippi and Mississippi State are concerned, I think we could take 2 different approaches. I think Mississippi will be a better point spread team, maybe not a better season wins team as far as over is concerned. And Mississippi State might be the lesser point spread team come regular season. You probably want to bet against them, but they may win some games as a favorite without covering. I think Ralph mentioned that you don't want to be laying points with them. So I think that, you're probably just looking at two totally different situations here. Better point spread team in Mississippi, better season over under, possibly in Mississippi State. I don't know that I could get there. I see the pen is up. Go ahead, Ralph.
I just wanted to, Drew, I appreciate you pointing that out. I went through a schedule earlier talking about those, and you tried to point out the NC State game. The games I mentioned, the non-conference games, that was actually Missouri's schedule for our next team that I'll bring up. So my apologies to all those guys that had me. Again, I have Mississippi State as a 30-point favorite against New Mexico, a 12.6 favorite against Arkansas, a 12.8 favorite against Tulane, and then a 0.9 or a 1-point favorite at NC State, just to go through those numbers.
Okay. So would that make you have it over, or I guess under 6.5, or would
no?
it be
My numbers still point out the 6.1. That was my legitimate number, because the only other games they're going to be favored, those three with basically the NC State game as a pick'em. Alabama A&M, I have them as a 44-point favorite, and Missouri, I have them as a 5.9 favorite. But in those other games that they're not a favorite, they're going to be a dog of at least 6 or more. So yes, you have 4 very winnable games, and you have 2 toss-ups, but it means you're going to have to pull an upset as a dog of a touchdown or more to get over the 6.5.
Hey, Ralph, do you have those numbers in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people don't realize this, that the Ole Miss LSU game is a huge rivalry. And I know LSU has kind of Alabama and Auburn that's a rival, and obviously Ole Miss has Mississippi State. But LSU and Ole Miss really don't like each other. That's September 26th matchup. Ole Miss has it in between Auburn and Alabama. I believe you tweeted it out in terms of how tough that schedule is. What do you have that point spread for the LSU Ole Miss game?
Yeah, I have it 20.2. I may have to really go back and look though at LSU. Robbie talked about my weighted system, and what it is you get 7 points for a first round pick, 5 for a second, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, because a first round draft choice is not one better than a 2. It's much better. LSU set a record with 65 points and 15 players drafted. So when you take a team that has 22 starters and you lose 15 of them, I don't think my adjustment on LSU is strong enough. So prior to the draft, I have 20.2 point dog. But again, I think my LSU numbers are a little bit high right now.
Okay, because I was going to say, I like Ole Miss in that game, not necessarily to win outright, although I think they could do it. But, I mean, you give me 3 touchdowns, I can tell you what side I'm going to be on. That's
well, LSU has Rice the week before and Nickel State the week after.
There's always a little angle to each side, for sure, Ralph. That's what this show is for, guys. Man, great stuff there. Mississippi State, Ole Miss. I think we're ready to head to Missouri, and if not, guys, we can recap at the end here. I'll tell you, I prepared mostly for Mississippi State and Ole Miss just because of Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach. Missouri, Robbie, a team that I know you know very well. You have, I believe your son just graduated from Missouri not too long ago, so I'll throw it over to you, man. What are you thinking for the Missouri Tigers in 2020?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take care of the coaching stuff. We'll let Ralph go to the schedule and the returning starters and whatnot. Listen, defensively, there's no problem here. What Eli Drinkwitz did was he kept the defensive coordinator intact. Ryan Walters now enters his 3rd season. Was the secondary
2 other defensive coaches.
Right, absolutely. He kept that part of the ball intact. So in my notes, the defensive line coach, Brick Haley, one of the guys that comes back, as Ralph pointed out right there. Cornerbacks coach David Gibbs, the other guy. So they've got 3 guys that know each line of defense here. It's not a problem. Defense will be familiar. The system will stay the same. What's going to change is offense. And Eli Drinkwitz, much like Mike Leach, he's his own OC. He didn't bring anybody in to coordinate this offense. He's going to do it. He's going to call plays. The offense that they were running last year, Derek Dooley's pro style goes out the window. You get multiple spread here. For those who watched Appalachian State last year, you know what Drinkwitz is going to do. Drew, you'll like him because obviously he's a disciple of Gus Malzahn. So if you think of what Gus Malzahn runs, Drinkwitz is the same way. The whole system really is based on the ground game. Got to run first. And they run a lot of those fly sweeps and stuff like Malzahn likes to do. And then he wants to attack in the passing game. Not a lot of side to side. And he doesn't always have quarterbacks with the best arm. When he had Ryan Finley at NC State and he was the offensive coordinator, they really could throw deep. They had good receivers, strong arm quarterback. Here at Mizzou, they probably have the best of both worlds because TCU's Sean Robinson, the transfer of a couple of years ago, probably takes the quarterback job over here. And he's a dual threat. And for those of us who watched App State last year, you give Drinkwitz a dual threat quarterback, and he's going to pose some problems for your defense. This team was able to get 3 practices in before the sessions were shut down because of coronavirus. So got a little bit of a look at the personnel. Not a great look, but a little bit of a look to see what he was doing. They went over some fundamentals, a lot of technique, because there will be some changes with his offense. You know, I don't know that it's in that bad a shape, Drew, but we'll see. It's a different offense, like I say, than what Dooley ran. So there is, you know, a lot of transition here. But Drinkwitz's a guy who knows what he's doing. It's not like when he stepped into App State. Remember, he stepped into App State fully loaded with an offense that was running similar stuff to what he wants to run. That was a much better situation than it is here at Mizzou. But defensively, they're in really good shape here. The defense should be even better than last year.
Good stuff, Robbie. Ralph, what are your thoughts here on Mizzou?
Well, you know, we've talked about coaches, and it seems like, you know, coaches are like draft picks. You watch ESPN this past week. There wasn't a bad draft pick. Everyone's a great fit for the team. Everyone's a great pick. I don't like this hire at all. I'll tell you what. Robbie talked about it. The guy was at NC State as an OC. He goes to App State, has 17 returning starters, taking over the best team in the conference, playing the number 109 strength of schedule. And so what? He gets to 11 wins with everybody back. Now, after 1 year as a head coach in a small program that was great, he not only is the head coach, but he's calling his own plays. I think that's a recipe for disaster. You know, he is going to run the same offense. He's calling it pro tempo. It's basically a quarterback-led spread off, no huddle offense. But they do run a lot. At App State, their average is 43 rushes and 26 and a half pass attempts. So that does go to Sean Robinson as a mobile quarterback. They do have a young quarterback, a true 4-star Cook, who was not in yet, who will be in the spring. I think he will get a legitimate shot. You know, I look at Missouri and, you know, we talked about their first 4 games. Unfortunately, I did it on the wrong video, but you're going to be a 28-point, a 15-point, and a 24-point favorite. So you got 3 wins there. You're going to be a 10 points. I have a 10.7 favorite against Arkansas. I have them as a 7.7 favorite against Lafayette. I have them at 6.3 wins. I do like this team over besides not liking the coaching hire. So 2 different thoughts there. I don't like the coaching hire, but the way their schedule plays out, 5 games as a touchdown or more favorite, with couple games as a pick'em, including couple at home against Kentucky and then the BYU road game. So there's certainly a team that I look at to improve. Recruiting, you know, they always struggle. They're the new guy in. 2 years ago, they were second last in the SEC. They were number 37 in recruiting. Only Vanderbilt was worse with 57. This past year, they were 50 and Vanderbilt was 52. So the new hire, the change in the schemes got people not coming there, dropping 30 spots. 50, very few teams in the SEC again. Maybe Vanderbilt finished 50 or higher. So to be down in the 50 range is not a positive. Then the other thing I look at is I do throw away part of Missouri's season last year. You know, they were excited. They were coming off an 8-5 year. They had Kelly Bryant. They were talking about perhaps winning the SEC East. Those were their preseason dreams. What do they do? Game 1, they lose to Wyoming. Remember, they were bowl ineligible. They were trying to fight that. And then mid-season, after they had won a few games in a row, They decided they weren't bowl eligible, and what happened? The entire season just deflated. So the way they finished, I throw that out because of the scenario surrounding them. I do like them over the win total, but again, I am not a fan of the hire.
Ralph, you bring up some great points, man, in terms of, he's a new head coach, his first time at a major program. And I'm always worried about that too. The one stop at an App State and then make a huge jump up into the SEC. Man, that's always worrisome because you haven't really gone through a lot. In plus the fact I hate young coaches calling their own plays. I really don't like head coaches calling their own plays at all, but especially a guy like this, I think that's a disaster waiting to happen. But, Sean Robinson, the quarterback, the transfer, I haven't marked as underrated. He's a guy I'm looking to be betting on. So it's kind of like a case where there's some bet-ons and some kind of fades here. Their schedule sets up, man, after the first 4 games, which I think they have an outside shot at going 4-0. I do think they'll be 3-1. They go at Knoxville, and then they go all the way to at BYU. I mean, that's weird for an SEC team to go out west like that and then have to come back to the South and play Georgia. They're likely going to get their doors blown off there. So I don't think the schedule sets up very well here for them, Ralph. But, I mean, at 5 wins, you still like the over here?
Yeah, again, you have 5 games that you're a favorite of a touchdown or more. Your last 2 games of the season, you got to remember you have that UL Lafayette game and Arkansas at the end. So those you're both a touchdown favorite. You're a touchdown favorite 3 of the 5. And, I don't think you don't say this very often, but you legitimately could be looking past at Tennessee to try to get your 5th win going to BYU a week later. How would you say, well, you're going to look past an SEC road game? Perhaps you think Tennessee's a very improved team this year. It might not surprise me if you get blown out the first half of Tennessee to live bet that for him to rest his starters and have him ready for that back-to-back road game going to BYU that next week in basically a pick 'em roll.
Yeah, I could see it as well. And Robbie, any final thoughts here on Mizzou?
I'll say this. Laya Drinkowicz was not the first choice of this team. The AD presented 3 other hires to the board, which all got turned down. And then they went to Drinkwitz afterwards. Now, he came in, and the Missouri fans are willing to give him a chance. He comes in as a ball of energy. They've got billboards up in Columbia with this guy on them. And every press conference he's had has been energy-filled, and he's kind of got that fan base riled up. The production has to come now. I think the good news for Drinkwitz is that his offense relies on the ground game. And if there's a strength that Missouri has right now, it would be the ground game. The running back situation is good. The offensive line situation is good. The run blocking is good there. And so perhaps they can lean on that for a while, and with Robinson being a runner too. But he was not the first choice of this team. We'll see how it goes. He could fall out of favor really quick if they fall on their face.
All right, guys. And shout out to Dr. Winston Oboogie. He liked it and he subscribed to the channel, so we appreciate that, guys. But if you could please smash the like button on your way out. We got Ralph Michaels at CalSportsLV, wagertalk.com. Ralph, any closing words here, man, on any of the 3 teams, and anything on Las Vegas? How you holding up out there?
Well, it looks like we're looking at, May 31st now, and there's some, a couple in the Las Vegas Review-Journal. There's a couple good articles today on what the Venetian plans on doing for all of those interested in seating. I think Las Vegas buffets are now gone. That'll be a thing of the past, but it's been in the 90s now, Drew. So we're going to see you back pretty soon, I'm sure. As soon as that pool opens, I'm sure we'll see your butt back here in town.
That was the deciding factor there, Ralph. The pool's closing. I was like, oh man, well, what's Las Vegas without a pool? Because there's no casinos, no sports books. That was the final straw. But yeah, definitely heading out soon. Robbie Veno at Rob Veno Sports at sportsmemo.com. Any closing words on any of the 3 teams, buddy?
Yeah, I could add a little piece about Drinkwitz. We can't forget his OC performance at Boise State, which landed him at NC State. He was a really good offensive coordinator there, NC State. I know NC State fans weren't totally sold on him, We documented the Appalachian State. He fell into a good situation. We'll see how it goes. Mississippi and Mississippi State, Drew. That's what college football 2020 is all about. Can't wait to see those two guys in action with their new teams.
Good stuff, guys. Hey, fun show. Appreciate you chiming in on the chat box. We'll be doing this every Tuesday, 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Pacific time. For Robbie Veno at Rob Veno Sports, Ralph Michaels at Cal Sports LV. Always putting out good information, great stats there on Twitter. I am Drew Martin. Guys, remember to wash your hands. Be safe. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
Thanks, guys.